What is Aita? What problem we aim to solve and how we solve it? Finally, what distinguishes us from other blockchain? First, what is Aita? Aita is a high scalable, incentive, and secure blockchain using a novel consensus, proof of reputation, and reputation-based strategy. The consensus protocol is developed by Distributed System Lab from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and the academic work has already submitted to an IEEE International Conference and will publish soon. And the technology team of Aita is led by Professor Zhang, head of the Distributed System Lab. And the core features of Aita includes secure, that is, the sharding failing probability in Aita is near to zero, and scalable. In AWS, with 1,800 validators, we have already reached an average speed of 6,852 transactions per second, which has far exceeded most blockchain platforms today. And cost-effective transaction fee in Aita platform is estimated as low as 0.001 cents per transaction. And incentive, each validator in Aita network is highly incentive to maintain the network. And so what problem we solve? Basically, Aita aims to achieve blockchain scalability. As you know, the scalability issue is the most important one that restricts the widely use of blockchain today. Bitcoin can only process 7 transactions per second, while Ethereum is just around 10. This is much slower than today's centralized systems like Visa, which process thousands of transactions in a second. And of course, there are many solutions proposed to solve this issue. The most direct way is to increase block size. However, this will lead to severe centralization because by increasing the block size, the ordinary computers could not afford the fast increasing storage for the blockchain ledger. Another way is to take transactions off-chain. This will greatly leverage the network throughput, but in the meantime, it will lose transparency and security level. As most of you agree, sharding is the most promising one among all technologies because by dividing the network into different shards, each shard processes transactions in parallel, so the network as a whole becomes more efficient. Of course, many sharding protocols have already been proposed, like Elastico, OmniLedger, and RabbitChain. However, these sharding protocols are of what we call random sharding. That is, they shard the network randomly, and this will lead to some unwantedness. For example, because the sharding process is purely random, the nodes with low capacity could cluster to form a shard, which will make the whole network rather unstable. And by introducing reputation into the sharding, first we'll have a higher network security. Our reputation-based sharding protocol can tolerate up to half validators in the network, compared with 1/3 like PBFT-based blockchain and a quarter like Elastico. Elastico can only tolerate a quarter of validators in the network. And also, we can have a strong community consensus. This is because when a validator joins the network, it automatically agreed on the reputation schemes, and because every transaction in the Aita network it has finality, and the reputation, if it is changed, it will change the whole history. So there's no hard fork in Aita platform, and once consensus is reached, it cannot be destroyed easily. And besides that, because our reputation system encourages nodes to communicate more with other nodes, so to leverage its reputation. So our network encourages self-network evolution, and this will, in the meantime, improve the network efficiency. Also, talking so much about reputation. What is reputation? Here, reputation is a judgment on validators' historical behavior and how much it contributes to the network. In our daily life, people would like to argue with those that with high reputation, and academics borrow this idea and do a lot of research in the distributed system academic field, the peer-to-peer network. So, reputation is also a well-studied concept in academic field. The most well-known application field is BitTorrent downloading, as you may know. In BitTorrent network, each node has a reputation score, and it is used for the nodes to download and upload files, because nodes with higher reputation they will get the priority to download the files. And things are similar. We also designed our own reputation schemes that is roughly related with the validator's performance, like bandwidth, transaction verification, correctness, and robustness. The communication history between these nodes and other nodes in the network. The detailed scheme is a little bit complex, so if you're interested, you can read it by yourself in our pending published paper. And how we do it? Okay, in the Aita network, there are two schemes. First is the reputation scheme, and then is the synchronization scheme. The reputation scheme. Okay. First, we will run the sharding and leader election schemes to elect leaders, which is responsible for transmitting messages between validators to cut down the overhead of the network. And then the network run a leader-based synchronous consensus to processing transactions and reach consensus. And after that, we use our synchronization schemes so that the network get updated about the whole network state from time to time. Okay, in each shard we design a parallel chain architecture. The reputation blocks, reputation chain, and transaction chain. The transaction chain is generated by transaction blocks, and the reputation chain is generated by reputation blocks. The main responsibility for transaction blockchain is to process transactions with high speed, and reputation chain is used to reach consensus on both transaction chain and reputation chain. And for sharding schemes, the main sharding principle is that each shard should have similar distribution of reputation. That is, the total score of reputation for every shard should be roughly the same. And for leader election scheme, the nodes with higher reputation should have higher possibility to be the leader. And for intra-shard transactions, at first, validators will give their transaction decisions for a particular transaction, and then the leader will collect the transactions and they pack together, and the leader will send back to the validators with the leader's signature. And after that, the leader will generate transaction block for the reputation score calculation. And for cross-shard transactions, as you may know, the biggest obstacle to implement sharding is the synchronization issue for cross-shard transactions. And we solve this by introducing state block. What is state block? State block is a block that contains validators' reputation score and client's account result. And the state block is generated at the end of every epoch and before the reshard. The state block will broadcast to the whole network so that validators in different shards can get updated regularly. This will ensure that all validators get to know the whole network states from time to time, so that the cross-shard transaction efficiency can be guaranteed. Okay, at the end of every epoch, rewards are given to validators based on their reputation scores, and the leader will get an extra bonus. What is special in our system is that we separate the reward for a block reward and the transaction fee reward. On one hand, validators get their reward in two forms. First, the block is the block reward, and then you will get the transaction fee in the fiat money, like stablecoin. And on the other hand, developers should freeze their native token to deploy the app, and for users will use fiat money to process transactions. Most blockchain platforms do not separate these two rewards, and from the perspective of economics, this is not reasonable, because if the price of token goes up, the users may choose to leave the network because of the high cost. And when the price of token goes down, things will get worse. When the price goes down, it will incent the miners to leave the network, because the miners will suffer a double of the block reward and the transaction fee income. And when they choose to leave, they sell all tokens, and this will form a vicious circle. As you may know, that the fall of Qing and Ming dynasty has a strong relationship with their silver standard. And what we learn from this is that as a transaction media, the token price should be stable, should be not that fluctuating. So in Aita platform, miners can guarantee a reasonable profit for their transaction fee, and while at the meantime they enjoy the development of the Aita project by getting the block reward. So to sum up, what distinguishes us from another blockchain? First is advanced technology. We have already achieved 6,852 transactions per second with 1,800 validators. And later this month, we will release our first public testnet. So if you're interested in it, you can experience our Visa level transaction speed by yourself. And secure. The probability of a sharp breakdown is very, very small. It is around 2.84 times 10 to the power minus 7, which means that on average it takes 4,000 years for all sharding systems to fail. And highly incentive, each validator can get reward based on reputation score, and not just like most mainstream blockchain platform today, only the block founders get a reward. And cost effective, the transaction cost is estimated as low as 0.001 cents per transaction. And second is our sustainable business model. Unlike other blockchain platforms, Aita Foundation makes profit out of every transaction occurred in Aita platform. We take 20% of transaction fee as our platform service fee. So although the amount for each transaction is rather small, but due to our high throughput, the revenue could be quite attractive. Here we do a rough calculation about our platform's income. We already reached at this state 1,800 nodes, and with 6,000 TBS, this will bring us about $400,000 revenue a year. And if after the mainnet, if our total validators can reach Ethereum or Bitcoin level, that is about 10,000, we can get an annual income of millions of dollars. With this much more money, Aita continuously to support our D-app ecosystem. And actually, we have formed a cooperation with big firms and some decentralized exchange projects. So after our mainnet, you will quickly see we can quickly build up our D-app ecosystem. And this is our core team. We're a team formed with academic giants and financial elite. Technology is led by Professor Zhang from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and the engineering team are well-experienced developers. Members responsible for marketing and operation has a rich experience in the financial institutions. And that is all about my project. Thank you very much.